Good afternoon, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our May 24th meeting of economic growth and development.
Yeah, you can. I can barely hear it. I don't think anyone else can.
Any better?
Yeah. Might be like.
Try to talk a little bit louder, Mike. Can I first get a motion to approve the minutes of our prior committee meeting? Supervisor Wild, second by Supervisor McGowan. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Is there any privilege to the floor? Any member of the public? Seeing none. Why don't we start with Liza if we can kind of get rolling.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. I have a brief agenda for you today, essentially just some workforce board reappointments and then one new appointment if you want to combine them. And then I just have a few workforce updates to share with you.
Thank you. Michael, you're moving
1 and 2.
1 and 2. Okay. So second by Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion? Liza, any further discussion?
I'll just share that 3 of our board members for the workforce board are being reappointed, which is awesome that they want to serve another 3 years. And our representative from the electrical workers union, even though they're located in Schenectady, he lives and works in Warren County. So I wanted you to be aware of that. And then for number 2, Susan Corlew, she's our new SUNY Adirondack representative. And Kaylin Pryor was the previous one, but we're not replacing her for the end of this term. We're just starting it as a new term on July 1st. So those are our board appointments, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions as far as any members? Seeing none, we have a first and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
No.
Opposed? Aaron. Thank you, Liza. Appreciate it.
And can I share a few workforce updates?
Oh, please do. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You may have seen the unemployment rate went down again for April. That's a blessing and a curse. So it's down to 2.8 for around Warren County, Glens Falls metro area. That is not seasonally adjusted though, so it's still just to see that it's around 3%. So essentially, everyone who wants a job is working, which is why we continue to pull people in from the sidelines, whether that's youth, people with disabilities, active seniors. We now have an organization called A4TD operating out of our office a few days a week. They serve the active senior population, and they have their own funding for training and work opportunities for anybody 55 and older. And SAIL, Southern Adirondack Independent Living, is also joining our office space on a monthly basis to serve people with disabilities, making sure that they don't lose all their benefits as they're trying to get into the workforce as well. So we're excited about that. It's graduation season, and we have many people we've sponsored through CDL programs, nursing programs that are graduating. And I'm happy to share more data on that post-graduation season and when our program year ends in June. But that's exciting. And we have funding from 3 different buckets, as many of you know, to continue to train more people through in-demand training programs here for our local industries. And working with Don Lehman, I'm going to start promoting that a little bit more heavily so that we can spend down some of those funds for training dollars. Particularly, we're looking at healthcare, right, nursing, manufacturing, CDLs, KSACs or mental health substance use counselors. Those are a lot of the industry trainings that we've been sponsoring for definitely a lot of businesses that need those employees. So I will keep you updated on those and would love to have supervisors support with promoting those opportunities to your respective communities. So I'll make sure that you receive those social media flyers. And then finally, I just wanted to share how awesome it was to visit the highway safety days training yesterday, which is a 2-day training that Amy Clued and her team planned. The second day was today. And most municipalities were represented yesterday. There were a couple not there. So I really just wanted to encourage the supervisors to make sure that their local highway teams are attending this annual training where they're learning from a lot of local experts state police. And also it's an opportunity for kind of gathering and team building. And it was just a really communal, great environment yesterday. And I want to make sure we all continue to support that training as it is upskilling our local workers, retaining them, and also avoiding safety incidents in our communities. And if anybody has any further questions, please follow up with Amy Clute about that. As this is definitely an awesome annual event that I loved attending yesterday. And it was cool to see Don Lehman try to work an excavator in a shirt and tie. And he did well.
Great. Thank you, Liza.
Any questions about workforce?
Mr. Chairman, thanks, Liza. You and Jim often talk about the number of job openings we have. Every month, it's 1,000 people and more depending on who's counting, right? But one of the things that I'd like to know, and I'm hoping you guys can put together, is like CDL. How many current openings do we have for CDL? And what are the starting wages for something like that? And so we can go out and the public talking about these issues that we have some data and some numbers that we can share to maybe entice some people to jump into the workforce, right? Or possibly change some careers. So if it's not too much of an ask, me next month.
Sure.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. On that note, without trying to be political about it, the situation with people seeking asylum could be an opportunity for us to have new people joining our workforce if they are here and authorized to work. Many of them are able to do so after a certain period of time has passes. So hopefully that's something that we can be looking at as our business community and our workforce development, where those opportunities are once we figure out some of the other logistical issues. And hopefully our chairman will quickly lift that emergency order once we have some more plans in place. So I think that needs to happen as quickly as possible.
I agree with you. I think on this one issue alone, I think communication and is really, really important. The availability of good people working for our county is a good observation. So,
I think John told me yesterday 1,500 jobs as of right now are open.
thank you. Any further discussion on issues? Jumping into request as it relates to permission to enter into a contract for the development of the Warren County modernization and plan for multi-use trails. Who would like to jump on that?
I'm going to let Ethan handle that one.
Okay.
There was an updated agenda that we sent out or provided to, it's online on the county site. And
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Without any other delay on this item, we just want to enter into a contract with Barton Judas for a project to study the modernization and connectivity of our multi-use trails from the Empire State Trail to the shores of Lake George. We got 4 great proposals from different consultants. We evaluated it in partnership with HGFTC, DPW, Planning Department, and Barton and Judas came to the top of the process. So I'd like to get this grant funded project underway, hopefully as soon as July.
Very good. Motion by Supervisor Strow, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion?
Thank you. And this is all that's been in the works. This is the last piece, hiring the consultant for everything that we have passed on all the resolutions up to this point.
Correct, and this includes support from occupancy tax as well.
Okay, all those in favor?
Right.
Approved. Number 2, funding through the New York State Home Programs.
okay, the CD recommends funding available. There's a sheet that's I don't know if everybody got it. It identifies roughly $76 million of funding availability through various programs. And the whole program was announced first, and then they announced the rest of the CFA. There's a separate resolution for the CFA versus the home program because the home program has a separate date for submission, which is actually in September, where the CFA has a July 28th submission date, and the home program is administered. It's not technically through the CFA, it's through what's called CDOL, community development online. It's a different process. So that's why you have a resolution. We're not, I'm going to be honest, I'm not 100% sure what communities are, they have not announced the regs on it. When I put this resolution request forward, there was a tentative July of 2023 submission. Now that's been pushed back to the 7th of September, and they're not even going to announce all the regs until July. So we could wait on this, but I don't think there's any harm in authorizing submission of an application. We'll work with communities. I know there's 2 communities that have had previous applications through various programs that did not get funded that we would look to kind of into this, but I don't have any information on grant limits or anything yet. So
Supervisor Leggett, second by Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you very much. Number 3, apply for grant funding through some New York State programs.
correct. The CFA has, as I said, actually in the CFA process, there's $66 million available. The big programs are the local waterfront revitalization program and the Division of Housing Community Renewal. We would look to submit applications, working with local municipalities. And there were we had 3 applications last year that we submitted that did not get funded, but they were close. We'd like to resubmit those. But there's actually some WebEx meeting tomorrow in these programs. So we'll find out more of what's available. But again, I just would like to get a resolution in place that we would work with the county administrator, our committee chair, and affected municipalities to move projects forward that we already have in the hopper. So I'd like consideration of that.
Okay, we have motion by Supervisor McGowan, second by Supervisor Stroud. Any discussion?
Thank you. Thank you. When you said there are things in the hopper, are there new things? Are we looking at the infrastructure, plan that we put together, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago? Like, how are we prioritizing and identifying which ones we're applying for this year?
Basically, what we look at is which projects are ready to go. Which have some preliminary engineering. If it's a local project, the match is available. Town of Chester has a project that we submitted last year. They were providing $50,000 in match. That didn't get funded. It was real close. We'd look to resubmit that. You spent that money. Okay. The other was the update of the first wilderness plan. We've secured roughly, $10 million or $20 million over the years with that plan. It was last updated in 2014. We would look to update some of the graphics and some of the project lists that are in there.
Can you update that to include Glens Falls?
No. It's not part of the eligible communities. And I can talk to you later about some of that. The second part of that is we assisted the North Creek with their waterfront redevelopment, and we would like to resubmit that. That was a close, close. This year, the funding is about the same as last year, so we should still be very competitive. And we'll just go through and tweak those. I've got to say, we're mentoring quite a bit right now. It's just the 2 of us. We have 2 open positions. It's a stretch to start really doing something brand new from scratch. At least we can take everything from last year and just kind of update it and work that through. But there's not a lot of time available staff wise to do this. Just being upfront. The one caveat I would ask for consideration of the resolution is that if we go forward with the CDBG program, we are going to have a public hearing. So next board meeting, we'd have to authorize the public hearing and have the public hearing at the July meeting. Submission date is July 23rd, so we would meet that deadline. And you raised a concern at the board meeting about not being able to apply. I did in the interim, and I've been working on it. We do have authorization from the grantor agency under the CDBG program to submit an application up to $1 million at the county level. So they are waiting, they know that the issues with Countryside, they're approving an extension. They said we have reasonable cause to be able to move forward without jeopardizing our eligibility.
So up to $1 million, that's typically the limit we've had. Okay.
Yeah, that's the limit this year, and we're only 20 million available. You know, we're not gonna do $1 million chunks, I'll tell you right now. So, because we want to spread the money around, so that's, I would ask that resolution also include public hearing requirement.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. So all those in favor?
No,
Opposed? Seeing no opposed. Number 4, part-time salaries.
All right, I would like to coerce Patricia into hanging around for a little while longer to help us prepare this, since we're staffing is an issue. So and she's agreed to do some of the stuff. So I'd like to, since we have 2 vacant positions, we have we have salary available in full-time salaries. I'd like to move 2,500 in my resolution form. Read through to something else. So $2,500 from part-time or from full-time to part-time. There's no budget impacts really. So
Motion by Supervisor Strauss, second by Supervisor Wild. Any discussion? Supervisor Brand.
Where are we in the process of hiring?
okay, that's it.
How bad is it looking?
It's been 2 years with no responses. I was at the national conference. We had postings there for planners. There was some interest by some individuals until they saw how much the salary was. I'm doing point blank, but they were coming out of New Jersey. They're coming out of, Virginia, where they're used to $150,000 salary. And to offer 50,000 or 67,000, they laughed. I'm honest. I mean, they laughed right to my face. So, and I tried to explain that the cost of living is what it is, but that didn't seem to affect them that much. I have worked with Trish. We've reworked some of the principal planner, replaced the assistant county planner because the principal planner does not have a residency requirement, just contiguous county. Thinking maybe we could draw some people in, from Saratoga, from adjacent counties. That wouldn't have to sell their house or relocate to come to work here. That has not really been successful. That's posted on the National American Planning site. It's on the Upstate American Planning Association site. It's on the New York Planning Federation site. Liza has listed it in their job listings. New York State Department of Labor has it. I also worked with Trish and contacted 7 somewhat local colleges that have planning programs and said, if we were to create a junior planner slot, do you have any graduates that would be interested? The faculty wrote back and said, great, thanks for the announcement. We'll pass it around. Haven't heard a word. No interest.
Wow.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. This planning function brings a lot of extra money into this county to enhance our infrastructure, to enhance our well-being. And I've been doing for the last couple of years, talking about this. We've had no action, no inquiries. We need to do something about this, otherwise this revenue stream for us is going to disappear. So I'm not sure what the motion might be, but I think we need to seriously address trying to figure out what that these salaries should be. Well, it's not going to be here much longer. It's been threatening that for probably the last 15 years. I think it was a resolution that's coming down in August. So, well, we need to do something about that, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I'm going to discuss it personnel. How about that?
We'll do a salary study and we'll look at the comparable positions and see if we are below market, at market, and see how far, if we are below market, how far we are. That's the best thing we can do at this point.
Do you think we could maybe get a a conclusion or result within a month?
Should be able to
Okay, John.
by next meeting.
Yes, thank you. Good. Claudia.
Is your position posted now? Planning? I mean,
Yeah, I'm leaving that to John and,
okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Stroud.
I just want to recognize, I haven't done it publicly, now. Wayne's Excellence Award for Excellence that was given by the New York State Planning Federation. Well deserved. And I'm very proud for Wayne as well and for the county for having Wayne here. Because he certainly earned it. So I want to make sure I recognize that. Thank you, Wayne.
thank you.
Thank you, John. So we have a motion, as far as part-time salaries, a motion. Did we get a motion on that one yet?
Yes.
We did. So all those in favor?
All right.
Thank you. Comprehensive plan updates. That's Ethan.
Okay, I'll keep this brief. The planning department has been working to get started on the countywide comprehensive plan. I think it was the winter time, we did hire a consultant for the RFP process, and we have been working with the consultant team and a working group consisting of the county administrator's office, DPW, Supervisor Leggett, planning department, just to interface with the consultant, scope the project, and figure out our course of action for the next 18 or so months. Planning generally is it's a play in 3 acts. The first step is where you gather all the information, understand what the shared facts are. The second step is to understand what your priorities and goals are. And the third step really is to identify what sort of implementation plan you're going to make to reach those goals. So we're very early in this first act right now. But we need to form a project advisory committee. This group will be tasked with, working with the consultant and the working group to sort of look at draft deliverables, make sure this process is moving along smoothly, and make sure that we have diversity of viewpoints across the county represented. We'd like to form this committee of about 10 to 12 people, maybe about 14 at maximum, through a process of reaching out to all our supervisors and asking them to nominate 1 or 2 people from their communities, whether it's an engaged resident who could serve on this committee for, up to 18 months or so, attend 6 meetings, do their homework, work in a group setting, serve as an ambassador to the planning process. We're going to circulate an email to supervisors that outlines what the role of a project advisory committee member is, and then request that whoever the supervisors nominate fill out a very brief questionnaire with their contact information, what their level of interest is in Warren County and the planning process. And then the working group would like to have a project advisory committee assembled by mid-June for a July kickoff, in which we'll start the public engagement process and begin the comprehensive planning process in earnest. So we will be reaching out to all supervisors with an email that you can circulate to people that you nominate. The working group will help assemble this committee. This committee is not a committee in the sense that it is a standing committee from the Board of Supervisors. It would be advisory to the Economic Growth and Development Committee with quarterly check-ins. Eventually, the Economic Growth and Development Committee will look at the draft comprehensive plan. Whenever that is finalized by this committee, it will be passed on to the full Board of Supervisors. So this project advisory committee will not be making resolutions to the full board or even to this group. It's very much a citizen advisory group, but it will be operating in full transparency, live stream meetings. We've already had a series of meetings with our consultants. Don Lehman, Sarah, and I have all been working on websites, and really an approach to how we have a very engaging and transparent process. So that's the update. That's where we are right now. So we need to get this project advisory committee formed for a July kickoff.
Thank you, Ethan. Appreciate that. Any comments, observations? Sarah, GIS updates.
I don't have anything major to discuss, so I'll just very briefly be working on a service line inventory project with the community. So I think most of you who have water districts in your communities are aware of this requirement by the EPA to inventory all water service line materials, both the private side and the public side. So we're assisting with facilitating that data collection process for the municipalities. If you are not aware of that, let me know. If you can share that on social media, Don has done some posts on the county website. If you can share that to your local town Facebook, that would be super helpful. We definitely notice when it gets shared on Facebook that we get an uptick in submissions. And the deadline for that, I believe, is for it to be completed is September 2024. So it's a fairly labor intensive process. Assisting with analyzing demographics for the comprehensive plan, working on doing some housing analysis. We will be getting a release of Census 2020 data tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to taking a look at that. We'll hopefully be able to incorporate some of that data into the comprehensive plan. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Sarah. Jim, anything to say?
I do pass on some things that you can share here. I want to quickly just update everybody on a couple of business items. In the last few weeks since I've seen you, there's been an incredible number of sessions we've been involved in regionally and statewide. So we recently attended the Capital District REDC meeting. It was a very important developments there around healthcare. They are about to release a study that CEG did with the shortages of the healthcare workforce, broken down by county, broken down by particular category of healthcare worker. But it's been deemed by the Capital District that particularly in the field of medical technicians and almost all classes of nurses, that the population is at a crisis in the district. As we get that data, I'd like to share it with you, but it's important because it leads to some of the other things I'd like to talk to you about. In addition, we attended a session with RPI's new president, who has begun a process of unveiling their 30-year plan for continued R&D development. I'm not sure many people realize, but other than MIT, RPI is the single largest funnel by which targeted R&D funds come through in the Northeast. More than 100 million typically in any given year. And they identified 5 particular segment areas, 2 of which are very relevant to us. What they consider to be precise medical device and life sciences, which we are a nexus point for the entire Capital District. And the third area continues their focus on freshwater protection and the expansion of things like the Jefferson Project into much more robust and aggressive approaches around research and freshwater protection. The reason these things matter is because they become feeders to what Ethan was talking about as we look at a comprehensive plan about where are other investments coming from that can be levered in our own economic interest over the coming years. As we develop more understanding of that, we will share it with you, but I found that to be very encouraging. We also participated in Adirondack Day at the legislature. The Adirondack Day, we have not traditionally been viewed as what I consider to be a classic partner, even though 92% of the county sits behind the blue line. It's the first time, as I understand it, that we were invited to be one of the primary stakeholders in that process. That's encouraging for us because it continues to highlight our position as being both the cornerstone and funnel for much professional services for the North Country, but also with a full foot in the Capital District. We become the connecting point for resources. We become the marketplace between those 2 regions. So far, the follow-up out of Adirondack Day has already started to materialize. The Lieutenant Governor came and spent a fair amount of time down on the floor in the well not only spoke to me, but spoke to a number of other entities and is now planning a visit, which we're helping to organize for later this summer to follow up on several of those issues. Every major legislative leader, whether it was from the House or Senate side or Assembly or Senate side, was there and engaged. I think this is all promising for us. One of the things that you should know is that they view the work that has been done around broadband and the continued role that this county plays in not only expanding its own, but helping its neighbors as a model for how they want to approach many other problems. And so there's a lot of discussion that is developing there that I think is positive for us. Ethan and Wayne both mentioned the CFA process, which has been unveiled by Empire State Development. We're trying to also, beyond the information that they would like to share around the public side, we would like to, have a workshop where private ventures are able to have direct interface with Empire State Development personnel to undertake any CFA applications they may make. We've also begun with several large organizations in the area to help them with their applications, which would be due at the end of July. Had a session this morning with one of our largest employers around an exciting project that they potentially would inject into this year's process. I shared with you a business update that just gives you a snapshot. These are active projects. They break down in several ways. I know that that's going to be hard, but there are essentially 19 active projects across the county. You can see that the majority of them sit in the Glens Falls, Queensbury corridor, but there's a fair amount of additional coverage throughout the rest of the county. Those 19 break down into 9 of those are business expansions, existing businesses that are looking to grow and require resources in order to do it or engagement with us to do that. There are 5 of those which are new business inquiries, somebody who is looking to either establish or relocate a business. There are also 5 that are what we would call development opportunities, but may not be a business. There's something that would add to our capacity or our infrastructure. Recently, there's been some dialogue that's occurred in the media about the amount of projects that the EDC engages in relative to the total amount of economic activity. If I were to take these 19 projects and put them against the number of businesses that have been formed in the last 12 months, there's more than 600 businesses that have been formed in Warren County in the last 6 months. So the idea that we're only involved in 20 can sometimes feel odd to people. It's important to understand that of the 600 that have been formed, we believe that roughly 40 to 60, maybe as much as 60% of them are property holding entities, LLCs that were formed because somebody bought a piece of property or put a piece of property in some kind of entity other than personal ownership, which means that we're really talking about something between 200 and 300 that we would consider to be classic businesses. And that means that the ratio is that we're roughly involved in 1 out of 10. I think that's classic from what I've looked at the data. It's also about as much as we can do in a productive way. We don't say no to anybody. If the demand came through and we had 40 entities that came and asked for our support, we would do our best to try to support the 40. But I do think this is a healthy aligned ratio for you. I wanted to highlight 3 of them just so that you know that there's some real stuff here. Red Rails expansion is represented by these dots up at North Creek. It's an important thing for all of us to understand. More than 40,000 annual visitors are coming through Warren County to participate in Red Rail activities. Their expansion and your role in helping them expand by access to greater access to the rail line is a dramatic impact to that part of the county. They're expanding the amount of amenities that they provide, and as the sewer and water gets developed in North Creek, the opportunity for people to stay in that community as opposed to simply make day trips is promising. But they're creating the demand, and we're proud to have helped them with that. Another 2 that are important to understand: M&M Printing moved from one location to another. Why is this important? Because they almost doubled the square footage that they are operating out of. You would think that a printing business would be an example of an old school business that would be shrinking rather than growing. That's not the case. There is still robust demand for those kind of services. And Immunitech, which is slowly taking possession and repatriating the former Aldi's on Quaker Road, is another one that we've been involved with in terms of helping them gain access to resources. But again, put in a facility like that that's been idle and put it in productive use in a job creating sort of way as an example of what these dots represent. Who's that? It's called Immunitech. So they're the entity that is essentially going to run a
third-party healthcare related organization out of that facility.
It's insulin.
Plasma, they-
Yeah.
What's that?
I think it's insulin related, isn't it?
Plasma related.
Plasma related. Good project with the planning board, yeah.
Yes, and I just wanted to give you a sense of what do these dots represent, so you have some sort of perspective. We talked with Wayne and Ethan before the meeting about continuing the value of collaboration. You saw an example of this collaboration in the meeting before here. We had an applicant who had come to us initially looking for guidance on how to develop a business that there really wasn't any clear precedent for how to develop. We shared with them all the developable property that was available in our area. It turns out that the best property was not an EDC owned property. It was a county owned property. And so that's exactly what we encouraged them to do. We also did not get in front of them. We did not out them until they were prepared to out themselves in the process of engaging with the community. This is a sense of what we do all the time. There are many of these dots. I can't tell you who they are. They're a future version of who you saw today, but some of them turn into real development opportunities. I know that there's more work to be done on that particular one. We will engage as best as we can. But I would like to continue to try to figure out how we better collaborate. I'd like to invite the planning group to join our what we call Council of Economic Advisors. That sits on that, and a number of other economic development entities that work in the region. We want to continue to find ways to work together for the maximum benefit of not only the region, but the individual business or entity. And I really feel like there's even more opportunity to do that if, you know, we can engage with the planning department. So we're eager to do that. I'd like to share with you, the EDC is holding an event on June 15th. This is a flyer that goes through it, but the annual meeting that we had last summer, where we talked about the demographic drought, we brought the author of that study, which is I think a seminal piece of work, is coming back to talk specifically about a need that we and every other community is battling, which is how do we bring more workforce into things like the trades. And the trades are not simply what we might consider to be vocational trades like plumbing or electrical work or construction. But also an LPN is considered a trade. A CDL driver is considered a trade. Anybody who enters into some kind of certification process after high school is essentially viewed as a trade. The reason that this is important, because we're not going to be able to meet these gaping needs we have in our workforce if we don't figure out how to divert more people from what they might consider to be their default four-year college path into these paths. And we need to talk about what works and what doesn't, and how do the economics of that work. If you're interested at all in this subject, I encourage you to come. If you register for the event, we'll send you the 40-page report. But more importantly, we're going to look for engagement with the community after this session is over. We're doing this in conjunction with SUNY Adirondack. We're doing it in conjunction with LISA and other organizations, with BOS and the Workforce Development Board. The idea here is for us to go figure out what can we do to allow us to outcompete, or at least adequately compete with our neighboring regions. We've got to figure out how to help the community understand this is not a secondary path. This is a great path for the community, a great path for the individual, a great path for the individual businesses that would benefit from that, and from the educational institutions that we have to help us take more people and bring them directly to work in productive ways in our community. If this is interesting to you, please join us for that event. I saw you have discussion at the previous one of the previous meetings. I carried in with me the economics of preventing and mitigating harmful algal blooms, where this is literally work that we're working to find connections to, where people have put dollar values on what is the economic impact of having these things and what is the economic impact of avoiding these things. This is an important aspect of our economy. The lake, not only Lake George, but many of the lakes in our communities are the lifeblood of the biggest portion of our economy. And understanding this and being able to put it in economic terms is something that we're working behind the scenes to do. The last thing I want to share with you, the CDTA decision that you guys made as a county last month. I have had engagement with all of our major employers in one way or another in the last 2 weeks. Without exception, every single one of them talked about how important this was to them. I wish more of them had presented themselves and would feel more comfortable doing that. But I can tell you definitively that they're sharing with me that they're not only eager for this to occur, but they're eager to figure out how they can engage with CDTA and even more precisely target where are the populations that they can bring in. Without that decision that you made and that this group in particular championed, I think we would be operating with one hand behind our back. And the business community thanks you for that. One last thing. We get data from the state every quarter. I just got the most recent data around employment as well as a number of other topic areas. Our housing inventory for the most recent quarter is now at 105 single-family homes that are available in Warren County. That's the lowest level that has ever been recorded since they started tracking it this way. It's 1/4 of what the level was in 2019 pre-pandemic. This is an issue that is not going to go away. Our housing starts during the first quarter, single-family housing starts in all of Warren County, 26. So put this together. If there are 100 homes available and we're building 25, obviously there's a lot of work on multifamily housing going on in other places. But if we do not address this, we will throttle our own ability to step into our existing economy, support our existing businesses, and continue to have a sustainable tax base. This is something we will have to work on together. It's probably going to take us years to be able to address it. I'm encouraged that the county's housing study is going to come out at the time when we need it the most, which is hopefully in the coming couple of months. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We'll have a draft. That's everything I have.
Thank you, Jim. Any comments, observations? Beth, did you have anything?
So Ethan asked me to find a couple of the CFA applications that are potentials for the county, and I think there's some things that also the community should be looking at. So the Department of State has 2 new countywide programs. The first is the Countywide Resiliency Grant Program. This is a 90-10 grant plan for the protection of natural and built infrastructure within communities. And the other one is the countywide pre-planning under the Brownfield Opportunity Area Program. So this is kind of a step back from the original BOA program to identify the presence of brownfields, vacant and abandoned sites that are underutilized within the counties, and then determine which ones would be most suited to bring forward within the BOA process. And so we are encouraging all of our counties to look at those, and we are happy to help with the application if you guys decide that you're interested in it. DOS also has their Smart Growth Community Planning and Zoning. So we were successful in getting funding for Johnsburg and Horicon to update their comp plan the last couple of years. I know the county's already doing it, but as a community, if you're interested in updating your comp plan or looking at zoning, let us know. Also, Wayne had mentioned the local waterfront revitalization programs. So the Regional Planning Board has 2 watershed management plans that were funded through LWRP. The first is for Lake Champlain watershed. This other one is for the Upper Hudson River watershed, which Warren County then half of each one of those. The Lake Champlain watershed plan has 263 projects totaling 187 million in implementation funding that we could apply for if the community was interested in going forward with that. With Upper Hudson, there's 190 projects totaling 300 million in potential projects. So again, they're on our website and our project portfolio. So as a county or a community, if you want to take a look at that and you're interested in moving any of those projects forward, please let us know. DEC water quality projects, salt sheds. We've been successful in getting 3 salt sheds funded in the last 2 years. So if you are a community with a salt pile that is not covered, please call me. That is a priority. Replacements are secondary priorities. There's also a new dam safety repair and rehab program through DEC. There's the same wastewater program. The priorities are effluent disinfection and phosphorus reduction, combined sewer overflow reduction of the secondary priority. And there's the non-ag non-point source, which we utilize to secure funding for culvert replacements, roadside erosion. So I've been talking to the DPW about that. But again, if there are any communities that are interested in those types of projects, please let us know. And just to update you really quickly on what we've been up to, we've given 2 loans so far this year, one in Warren County, one in Essex County, totaling $291,000 in loan capital. We received a $320,000 SS4A, which is Safe Streets for All planning grant. We have just completed the RFP and we're about to release that. There'll be 2 plans coming out of that, one for the MPO area, which is Warren, Washington, and Vermont, and then one for Hamilton, Essex, Clinton. We have a really aggressive timeline on that one. That program is a 5-year program. And we're already, the second year RFP is out now, so we want to have our plan done, almost done by this time next year. So we can apply for implementation funding. There will be 3 more years worth of funding in that program. We have been invited to apply for 3 Northern Border Regional Commission grants. So the first one is for our North Country Cellular Deployment Plan. We're going to do drive test data. We have cellular drive test data in Hamilton, Essex, and Clinton. So this funding would do it in Warren and Washington. And then we would do a regional plan for cellular deployment utilizing macro cell sites or cover sites and small cell cellular technology on major road corridors. The second grant is for a workforce housing revolving loan fund to capitalize that as part of the implementation of our housing plan. We are including Warren and Washington counties in the implementation of the actions coming out of our housing plan. And then the third is for our small business technical assistance program, which we received $150,000 from Warren County ARPA. We also got $50,000 from Washington County ARPA and $10,000 from the Adirondack Foundation. And now we're applying to Northern Borders for more. And just to update you on broadband, so regionally, with the FCC map challenges, we challenged over 8,000 BSLs regionally. 89 of those were Warren County. Right now, we are in the process of working with the providers. So we provided a challenge, and then the providers could look at it and say, no, we do provide service here, and here's the evidence. And that's the process we're working through right now with 4 providers. And we do have 1 provider we haven't heard from yet. So we'll see what they have to say.
Thank you, Beth. Any questions for Beth? Well,
Right.
If I can say the Brownfield Opportunity Area Program, there's a new development in this year that allows for us to look at scattered site, vacant, and potentially contaminated sites across the county. Previously, there was never funding for anything beyond a concentrated downtown or corridor. And if the county can do this under the new program, it could be extremely valuable for smaller rural communities that might not have the concentration of brownfields or vacant unutilized sites. What we could do the county as a whole and then bring that to scale. So we're going to be meeting on that in 6, I think.
Claudia.
Thanks. I'm really glad that you're including us in the implementation of the housing study. I know I've been on the planning department, like on and on about where's our housing study. And the reason I do that is because I got it in my head early on that we would be able to use that study to help bring people to actually do development projects. We would be able to demonstrate to them that we have a need, the one that we've been anecdotally saying on and on and on. So it's great that we'll have our own study soon, but really what we need is the implementation out of the study. And you've already eclipsed us with the study for all the other counties. So I don't want us to get left behind as the entire region goes forward implementing and trying to get these microcosms of new housing developed.
thanks, Claudia. Anything else?
Great, thank you. So for more clarification on the broadband, where we're going in cell phone. Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board is moving ahead with some projects or grant funding to help get that closer to our constituents being able to have services in their remote areas that are now underserved or not served at all.
That is the end goal. Yes. Right now, we're still stuck in the FCC mapping challenge. So the FCC worked with the providers. They put out a map that said every BSL, broadband serviceable location, this has broadband. We looked at it and said, no, it doesn't. We don't think it does. And here's all the addresses that we think this map is wrong. Sarah is the one I did not put that together, Sarah. And so after submitting that to the FCC, the broadband providers got that information and they can come back and say, you're wrong. We do serve these locations and here's the proof. So that's the part of the process that we're in right now. So they're contacting us saying, we can prove that we have broadband in these locations, and we look at that information and then we say, yeah, okay, you're right. And we can withdraw our challenges. The majority of our challenges have been upheld, meaning that there was not evidence against them. But that's where that whole process is right now. That's going to inform the federal money that comes to the states for broadband deployment.
So we're talking another 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
No, this is absolutely frustrating. I must say, as a supervisor that gets contacted repeatedly every week by constituents saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? And going through, and I'm saying, we're working on it. I've said that for 8 years. And I tell you what, it's not working anymore. We're working on it. I try to explain that we are working with for-profit corporations that are saying, no, we're not going to do it unless you pay us to do it. So there's that standoff. It's good news that there's money coming through. And we got to thank, from national government all the way down through that this money is funneling down here. We have done the groundwork, have the mapping, are able to put together, these projects and hope they get funded. But then just add cellular on top of that as well. Another thing, Frontier Communications sucks. They do a terrible job in the town of Chester. I'm getting info from everybody in Harbor Road, Bank Avenue, Parker Street, everywhere. Frontier Communication does not respond. And I'm saying this loud so that maybe it gets out there in the news. And I'm sure that everybody, Stony Creek, Frontier Communications does not provide the public service that they're supposed to provide to the people that are paying for it every single month. 2 week response to get your internet fixed, and you have a health condition, you have a loved one that needs to be in touch. Unacceptable. Unacceptable.
Passion is.
Thank you, Supervisor Leggett, for that. Passion. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I just want to make sure that we address some of the concerns you have. You're right about the frustration with Frontier. That's why I laughed when Ethan and Beth mentioned that there was somebody they had not yet heard from. Really? Yes.
Yeah, we actually have heard from Frontier.
Well, I'm sorry, I attributed it to them, but they have been a difficult partner in this. But ultimately, the way that this is going to be resolved is to ensure that we know without debate who can or cannot be served. We have to provide a graceful way for a state that once declared victory saying that everyone was served to be able to acknowledge that indeed that wasn't the case. I know it's a painful process, but we're unwinding what was many years of denial of this. And at that point, it becomes a market opportunity. I do want to inject some reality here. This county, because of its position of having more than 90% probably addressed with a broadband standard, does not compete well right now against those that are a much lower number. And our surrounding counties took significant dollars out of their ARPA process, many of them $6, $8, $10 million, to deploy solutions themselves. That does not mean that's the right way to go. I'm simply telling you that is what's happening around you. So if we do not want to fund it and we want to wait for the federal government to come, the way we do that is make sure that the data is impeccable and we meet every single week. And we still chair that forum and all the carriers are there and we bring this data and we wear people down week after week. We've added cellular to the agenda. Now every other meeting is about cellular and in addition to broadband. So I don't think there's a silver bullet here. I think this is hard work that has to go on every single week, and we're here to help you with it. But I got to tell you, there's a lot to be done.
Can I also add that, so we have broadband planning funding from the Northern Border Regional Commission. It was given to us as being part of their local development district group. And so I actually had a meeting with the State Connect All office a few days ago to coordinate their statewide planning and seeing where we need to fill in the gaps more locally to get the level of planning that's needed. So when this federal money does come out, we have deployment plans for where they need to go and where it needs to go the most and how we can fill in our middle mile and our last mile and where we're going to need publicly owned infrastructure and privately owned infrastructure. So I want to make sure that what we're doing with that funding is not overlapping anything the state's already doing, because there's no reason for us to pay for the same thing and be doing the same thing. So we've just started those discussion possibilities. So
Yes, I just want to go over. John Lehman, did you hear all that? Thank you.
Is everybody had enough?
Yeah.
Yes, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Thank you.